Tinder date from hell. So I'm 23 and live in California. Last year I decided to use Tinder for the first time. I had previously used Hot or Not and POF, but mostly just got bots and scammers, so I already wasn't very big on online dating. However, I was feeling bored on Friday afternoon, so I decided to install Tinder and just see what happened. After creating an account, I began swiping people, and it wasn't more than like a half an hour after I had gotten off the app that I got matched up with someone. For a little context, I am what you might call bisexual. I hate labels, but that is what I fall under, I suppose. And I matched with a 25-year-old dude named Aiden. Aiden was what I would call attractive, and he had similar interest in gaming and coding as I did. I decided to go and send him a message, but before I could even type a single letter, he sent me a message first. The message read, "Hey, saw you're new to Tinder and thought I'd reach out to you and say hi." I said hi back, and the two of us began talking about our love for video games, movies, and coding. He told me he's a full-time coder and makes a salary only working 4 hours a day. He asked me if I'd be down to come chill with him. I then offered to have him over to my house because I was alone and he lived with his parents. He seemed very excited all of a sudden and said he'd love to come over. We agreed on him coming in an hour so that I could tidy up my room and get my PC ready for gaming. After about an hour or so, I sent him my address and he said he was on his way. Now normally, I wouldn't have invited someone to my house that I've never met, but this guy seemed harmless and he was attractive, so I wanted to give him the benefit of a doubt. I heard a knock at my front door and I looked out the peephole and saw it was Aiden. He had a bottle of wine in his hand and a smile across his face. We hadn't discussed drinking wine together, but I did in fact like red wine, and the brand he had with him just so happened to be my favorite brand. I opened the door and greeted him. I told him that wine was my favorite and asked him if he's a mind reader. He laughed and said that I just strike him as a red wine kinda guy. I asked him how he planned to get home if he ended up drinking too much, and he said he Ubered to my house. We ended up having a couple glasses of wine on my back patio, just talking about life, work, and shared our coming out stories. After the wine, we went inside to play PC and had a blast. After the gaming, he showed me his laptop which he had brought with him and showed me his work. Eventually, I had to use the restroom, so I excused myself to pee. I then heard him approach the bathroom door and turn the knob. Because I didn't lock the door behind me, he just came right in, completely unannounced and without any warning, just starts grinding on me from behind, while forcefully grasping my shoulders. I shoved him off of me and just kind of jokingly said, "That's a bit intrusive." He just smiled at me and said, "I just wanted to see how you react." I left the bathroom and walked into the kitchen with him walking right behind me. I asked him if he wanted more wine or maybe some water, but before I could grab the water bottles from the fridge, this dude pushed himself up against me and groped my private parts while smiling at me super creepily. This time I was completely taken aback. I shoved him off me forcefully and yelled at him. I told him we had just met and that I didn't think it was the right time to just jump into something sexual. He said I was just a waste of time and said that I had no idea what I was doing and that I give gays a bad name, then said I was being homophobic. I told him that if I was homophobic, that I wouldn't be hanging out with him and talking about the way we were. I told him I found him attractive, but that he was crossing major boundaries. He just laughed and said, "In the LGBTQ community, there are no boundaries." And then, just like that, he said he had to go. Thank God is what I thought to myself. I walked him to the front door and he walked out without saying goodbye or anything. I didn't think anything else of it and decided I needed to take a shower. I got in the shower and about 5 minutes into my shower, I kept hearing this tink sound coming from the other end of the door. I peek out through the sliding door of the shower and look down towards the bottom of the door. To my shock, I see Aiden holding a freaking spoon to the bottom of the door, looking in at me while I'm showering. I could only see this because of how high off the floor the door sat. Not knowing what to do, I just pretended to not notice him and slowly turned the shower off. I got out, wrapped a towel around my waist, and prepared to confront him by yanking open the door. Before I could do that, I heard him snap a picture with his phone. I flung the bathroom door open and he flew down the hall and out my front door. I saw him get into a white Honda Civic and drive away. He had lied about taking an Uber for some reason. I have no idea what he took a picture of or why he took it in the first place, but I can imagine that it wasn't for anything good. I immediately blocked him on Tinder and was paranoid that he'd return. So that's my story of the Tinder creep who groped me in my own house. Edit. I did lock my door after he left the first time. I'm thinking he got in through the back sliding door. The time a creepy neighbor tried to stab me. This happened in 2008 when I was 9 years old. I lived in a townhome community where each road had 2 sides of homes. In between the backs of the houses, there was a back road with alleyways that went in between each building section. I lived on the edge of one of these, and my townhome was one of the alleyways. I lived on one street, and across the back road on the opposite side lived an elderly woman whose name I don't even know. I am not sure what her situation was, but for whatever reason, she never liked me specifically. She was creepy and spray painted all of her windows so no one could see in her house. However, that never stopped her from sometimes staring out her bedroom window directly at mine and keeping it open at night to shine a red strobe light into my room across the way. She used to yell how she hated us. I was in the 4th grade, and on a particular January morning, I had unfortunately missed the bus. My dad sent me outside to get in the car so he could drive me, and he said he'd follow me out soon after. As I was walking to my dad's car, she came out of the alleyway next to my house slowly, with a gigantic kitchen knife behind her back. She raised it and started running after me. I was faster than her, so I was able to avoid her and was able to get into the house. She walked and stood on the neighbor's porch across the way and stared at my house. I was terrified. My dad ran out and yelled at her, and she said she wanted to get rid of her stupid kids. My parents called the police, but the police sent her home and had an ambulance pick her up later. My parents went to some kind of court meeting about it, but I don't really know the details. I didn't see her again after that until 1 year later. I don't remember the day, but it had snowed that morning, so I was going to run out of the front door and play in the snow. I opened the door to see her standing on the porch, but looking out towards the road. I panicked, closed and locked the door. I ran up to my parents' room and told them what happened, and we saw her walk off the porch up the street. I never saw her again after that. My family has since moved far away from there, but people I know say she still lives there, and her windows are still the same spray-painted windows. Though it doesn't affect me as much as it used to, I still don't like being around knives. Belfast Craziness. Okay, this happened probably around 2002. I moved to Belfast from London and I would have been like 11. I'm 30 now. Anyway, I lived in a new area. A lot of houses were being built and they were all massive and beautiful houses despite being a terrible area I thankfully no longer live in. I'm with a friend called Dave. We're looking for my sister and we go around the corner from my house. Down where they are building a bunch of houses and it's pretty dark. I'd probably say it's like 10 or 11 p.m. I don't really remember why we were actually looking for my sister. I don't even think she was around. Anyway, we are walking past houses that look pretty much finished. As we are chatting, a random guy shows up and out of the blue behind us, grabs a hold of me. Dave by this stage is batshit petrified and runs away crying and climbs over a fence, completely ditches me. The guy is very casual despite being creepy, and I'm not as freaked out as I should be. I assume he's a provie, which is someone who watches the streets in West Belfast. He's got a hold of me, and it's like when you've been caught in a place you shouldn't be in. I expect him to just be like, "You shouldn't be here at night whilst we're patrolling the streets," etc. But suddenly we go to a house which isn't completely built yet and nobody lives in it. Well, that's what I thought. I'm literally standing inside this basement-looking house whilst he's outside phoning the cops, and I assume he's fake calling the cops. The conversation sounds fake, and he sounds like he's just trying to scare me, and he is. I get really freaked out now, cause upstairs there's like this constant tapping sound. And it can't be a builder by himself at like 11 p.m. surely. It sounded like someone locked in something trying to get out. That scared me. It was the speed of the sound, and as if they knew I was in the house. It sounded like they were trapped upstairs or something. Suddenly he's off the phone and he's like, "Okay, the cops are coming to your house soon. Leave now." I'm thinking, nah, not really. I didn't give you my address, but at the same time I was freaking out because maybe this guy knows the streets and where I live. So that entire night I was just like looking at my window, hoping no cops would come. They didn't in the end, and he obviously did all that just to scare me. But why? This situation for me is scary because a guy randomly grabbing a hold of you in the street in pitch black darkness is freaky regardless of whether or not it's a building site, and I probably shouldn't have been there. He could have put me in a room and locked the door. Had someone torture me or something. I've always wondered why he was there, what he was doing. Afterwards, I was scared to go out at night in the area unless I had someone with me. Truth be told, there were a lot of issues in the area, and I'm guessing that guy and a bunch of other guys were acting like undercover cops, since the cops weren't usually comfortable coming up to where I lived because they'd usually get bricked. It comes from the troubles. Looking back though, I think the entrance was blocked off and we weren't actually allowed in there. Considering the situation, I was actually pretty calm compared to my friend. And I have terrible anxiety. I think I just assumed that this guy wasn't bad. But again, on any given day, he could have been bad. I appreciate the feedback, guys, considering this is my first story on here. For me, because the guy showing up and being in the house happened in the sake of 5 to 7 minutes, it was hard to fully digest what was going on and reminded me a little bit of the film Audition. Obviously nowhere near as freaky, but the sound upstairs was similar to the guy in the scene of the audition. If you have watched the film, you'll know what I mean.